Yeah. I want to thank Glenn Liebman and everyone who's part of Mahaney's, the Mental Health Association of New York State, for welcoming me here today, but also for just being incredible champions and advocates of all of our citizens, but particularly now our main focus has really been on youth mental health. And so you're the ones who are dealing with the practitioners, you're going into the classrooms, you're dealing with this hands-on, and I, as the governor of the state of New York, am so grateful that we have people like you that are out there who care so deeply about our young people. So let's give a round of applause to everyone who's part of this great organization. You know, you really have been at the front of the line in terms of focusing public attention on these issues, and they fell on deaf ears for such a long time. There was a stigma associated with talking about mental health, and families were embarrassed or ashamed to try to get assistance, and schools, it wasn't their place. And so we're working really hard to change the whole dynamic about youth mental health. And that's why I've been so focused, not just the $1 billion, but really convening the first ever Youth Mental Health Summit at the Javits Center. We had thousands of people who came, people who are professionals, we had young people, we had parents, educators, everybody who's part of that whole ecosystem to make sure that our children can develop in a healthy way. And we're looking also at the barriers to that. That's why we did our youth listening sessions around the state of New York. Launched it in the Bronx about a year ago. I've been all over the 5 boroughs. I was just in Buffalo a couple of days ago. We've done many events with the legislators who sponsored legislation that I think is critically important. If we can't stand up and help our children get out of a crisis, then we have failed them. And I, as the governor of the state of New York, don't accept failure as an option. So this is the urgency that I'm bringing to this cause, why I am investing a lot of my time, energy, and political capital to say we can't solve everything right now, but there's one area where I know we can make a real difference. And this is the effects of the addictive, and the addictive word is the word I'm focusing on, addictive algorithms that are intended to bombard our young people when they scroll social media and to draw them in deeper and make it harder for them to put down their device or to interact at a personal level with others. So the companies are responsible for this. This is driven by profit. They also know that there's negative effects on children. They don't have to listen to the Surgeon General who warned about the effects of this a year ago. They just have to see what's happening in their own families. I guarantee the workers who work for these companies, they all see what's happening. The parents see what's happening. The teachers see what's happening. And this legislature is working so hard. We're working in partnership with our sponsors of legislation to say you cannot continue the practice of bombarding young people with these absolutely addictive algorithms. I cannot overstate the powerful draw they have on our young people. I have seen them. I've sat with them. And I cannot get out of my mind the young person who said to me, "You have to save us from ourselves. We don't know how to stop." Well, it's not their fault. They don't know how to stop because there's an intentional strategy to draw them in and get them addicted to this. That's our battle. But also the rights of parents. Parents don't know what's going on during the night hours when the children are supposed to be in bed. They're young people who need their rest. They desperately need their rest to be able to cope with the next day and all the resiliency that's built up by getting a good night's sleep. Parents should have the right to be able to, on their own, say, enough is enough. I want my children to get rest and not be pulled into this 24 hours a day, and to be able to shut off from midnight till 6 a.m. That seems very basic. Don't understand why there could ever be opposition to that as well. So I'm here as the first mom governor of New York. I've raised kids. I know the stresses they're under. I see what's happening to younger members of my family, nieces and nephews, and what is happening to the children of friends of ours. So it's real. It is out there. So what we did was talk to, as I mentioned, the young people themselves, the companies, the people who are the professionals, which is what we're doing here today, talking to parents, building a coalition of support to say we will stand up for our children. We can save them, and it starts with legislation that we hope that the legislature will get through over the next couple of weeks. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions on this topic for starts. And
yeah, we start with the on topics while we have the mental health. Governor, you said last week, I think it was last week or the week before, that the industry should get involved in these conversations, the social media industry. What kind of conversations have you had with them?
No, we've been talking to them. We say, you're better off working with us. We will come up with a national model. We can listen to you about where you think you may have some legitimate arguments. We're not anti-business. We're anti-harm to our children. And they should see that and work with us on this legislation instead of saying no. So I think we're making some progress. Some of the responsible companies are already taking steps on their own, and I commend them. But we have to bring everyone to the table. And they should be proud of the fact that they're working in a state that cares enough about our kids that will stand up for them.
Governor, so I'm sorry, have you seen a shift in what these companies are willing to negotiate now, or do you think that they are just trying to kill these bills?
I think that my experience tells me that the initial reaction to legislation that tells an industry what our values are, what we think they should be doing, is always met with resistance. It's very natural. But when they see that we are committed to doing something, we will not be scared off because of initial objections. We're sticking with this fight. We're not giving up. So now it's time to come to the table and work with us. You'll be far better off if you work with us. So is there a shift? Yes, there's always a shift. As we pull them closer and say, it's going to happen. Do you want to be part of this or not?
Yeah,
go ahead.
One of the things, when this came up, when you initially proposed your budget, one of the issues that came up was, how do you confirm the user's age if they're under 18? What kind of thought have you given to that since then, and what might we see in a final bill?
I will tell you right now, there'll be more controls than simply giving your birth date. Because the very smart young people I sat with just on Friday told me, they said, it's kind of a joke because they know how to change the date of a birthday. So they kind of laughed about it, but they can always find a way around it. So we're going to have more controls, and more thought has been given to that. And the companies already have to do this. I mean, for online gaming in states and tobacco sales, and you already have to do this. So for them to say we can't do that, I'm not buying it, because you already do for other sales. So it can be done.
What kind of controls?
I'm working out in the legislation, but it's going to be more than just date of birth. More than just date of birth.
Anything else on topic?
I do have one weird question. It's okay if you can't answer it.
I've never given an option. If I didn't have an option to answer, I'd be happier.
I was thinking about this with apps like TikTok and YouTube Shorts, like the vertical videos. How do you change the algorithm there? Because if you do it by chronological and you have like 7,000 accounts to follow, and you just get like one after the other, is there any thought to like how to change that?
I will raise the Dan Clark question to our experts and figure out the answer to that. But again, government often lags. The problem's been out there for some time. I mean, we saw the statistics that show from 2011 to 2018, when the last time it was really studied in a meaningful way, and I think we should continue to study that there has been more young people who are needing mental health services, and that's the advent of the addictive properties. That's when the algorithms really started. You can draw a direct line to that and the mental health that children are facing today, the mental health challenges. So I'm not saying we're going to be able to get ahead, because it's hard to know where the industry is going. But I encourage the industry to work with us, to be responsible, to look out for these young people, because otherwise there are more serious consequences that lie ahead. We are not going to sit back. And we don't want a whole generation of young people with mental health challenges. I mean, the statistics are shocking on the number of people. 1 in 5 young adults has a mental health condition. 50% begin by the age of 14, 75% by the age of 20. This is when they're supposed to be having their carefree years. They don't have to worry about a mortgage yet. They don't have their student debt yet. They should be enjoying, engaging with young people, developing their personalities and developing the kind of adults they're going to emerge as. Instead, they're living in this dark place, whereas there's this FOMO, fear of missing out, that if they put down their device for 1 second, that someone might be saying something about them, or they've got to respond to something. This is what a young person told me the last time I gathered them, that they're afraid of having it down even when they're meeting with the governor. So this is how addictive it is. We have to liberate them from this. We have to just draw a line now and say, no, enough is enough. And that's why I've raised the issue, and I'm going to continue raising it and having conversations about why you're even able to have that access during school hours. Think about it. I understand parents' concerns. There could be a tragedy at school. Something happens. I get it. So if you need to send your young person to a school with a flip phone for an emergency, that's something we can have a conversation about. But to think that you need to have access to TikTok and scroll all day long when you're supposed to be learning geometry and chemistry, those are hard enough subjects anyhow. So let's let the young people be young people again, focus on school, after hours, engage with their friends on social media if they wish, and certainly have the parents have the right to be able to shut it all down at midnight. So that's what we're going for. All right.
Let's do Ox. Jack, can you start?
Yeah, sure. Governor, given the 2 weeks we have remaining, this is a big part of it, what do you hope to see from the legislature over the next couple of weeks, and it's given the frustration that you expressed from them at the end of last session?
Last session, the frustration had to do with the volume. We have been working more closely with them throughout the session, which is what I was asking for, to have us engaged in the back and forth on legislation that they want, that we want, but sometimes you just disagree on the means to get there. And the social media is an example of that. We're working closely with them. Instead of them coming up with a bill, putting it on our desk along with 500 other bills passed in the final week on top of the other 500, that was literally at over 1,000 bills that I then have to review. We review every line, go through the whole process, decide we're going to sign, what needs amendments, we call them chapter amendments, or what I will end up vetoing. So I think what I've been trying to do is change the culture around this, work with us more closely before the end. So I'm feeling more optimistic that our priorities are aligned, and then we'll get to the finish line, and they can introduce all the bills they want, but at least there'll be bills that have had some conversation with us and have a better chance of being signed.
John?
Governor, we're about 2 months since you sent in the National Guard to the subways. I'm curious what metrics you're using to determine whether that's been successful, and I'm also curious about the end game. I mean, at what point do you pull back? What are you going to be looking for?
Good question. We're planning on doing an event on this very shortly, so we'll give you all the statistics, but I will tell you, of all the things that I've done that was, a bold, aggressive action to deal with public safety and perception, that is at the top of the list of one of the most effective. We saw a spike in subway crime in January. We met with the mayor and his team. We said, all right, let's pull together here. He sent in more NYPD. I said I can bring in resources, transit police, state police, and the National Guard to just be a calming presence, to not be threatening, but just stand there and be there if people need help. This, when I walk the streets of New York, is one of the number one issues that people raise to me unsolicited and thank me. Woman says, when I was in a diner a couple weeks ago, I now feel better having my daughter get on the train when she goes off to high school. Someone else, a senior citizen, said, I feel better when I'm going to the doctor's office. I'm okay. I listen to everybody. If you want to talk to me, sit in a diner with me, and I listen to everybody in there. And they feel much more secure about this. So I would say this has been an overwhelming success. I also know that statistically, crimes trend upward in the summer months. And so it's probably not the time to say we're done, but I will be very happy to show you the decrease in subway crimes, and I don't want to throw out a number without having the exact number because it keeps getting better and better. But the last numbers I showed a dramatic decline from, again, we are heading upwards. Remember, even stopping the increases would be progress, but now our subway crimes, the level of crimes is back to the pre-pandemic level, when people are not worried about crime on the subway. I know the perception is still a lot of anxiety. I deal with that. It's real for people. But if the presence of National Guard, in addition to the NYPD, makes people feel better, more likely to take the subway, have a better experience, that's good enough for me. But there will be an end game.
How do you, no, I'm sorry. Go.
One more channel 10.
Yes, thank you. Governor, could you share your thoughts on possibly changing the state's liquor laws when it comes to shipping alcohol?
Not aware that legislation has gotten to my desk on that yet. I'll be happy to look at it if the legislature passes this. I called for a wholesale look at our SLA laws last year, and it's frustrating to me that we have laws on the books that go back to prohibition. I think things have gotten a little better since then, so I'm always looking to improve in our delivery of services, but also something like that has to come to the legislature, and we'll wait to see whether they do something in this session. All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate.
Weinstein bill, the Molyneux witnesses legislation. How important is it that you get a piece of legislation before the legislature leaves?
Well, if the legislature is going to take action on it, they only have a few more days. We've been having conversations about the pros and cons of this, and there's very strong feelings on both sides. And I have my opinions, but I'm going to wait and see what the legislature comes up with.
That seems like a little bit of a departure, though, from a few weeks ago. You said you expected to get something on your desk.
Well, I do. I don't know what that's going to look like until it lands on my desk, and I expect they will deal with it.
Do you think it's important that they do something before they leave?
The legislature should act on something, yes. Yes. Yes,
Thanks.
they should. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.